Hey, what's up?
Good afternoon.
Evening, how you doing? What's going on? Hey, I guess, it's time to do a class. Tonight, hey, check it out. It's, how many we got here? One, two, everybody here?
Not everybody, I don't think.
Mostly everybody. One, two, three.
Yeah.
Conrad, okay, you're here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, who emailed me their stuff, their paper? Devin?
I emailed you Friday or Saturday, I think.
I think me and Devin both did, but we were in the same group.
Did you upload it to Blackboard?
Where was that at? The upload spot?
Week 6 folder and the course modules, I believe.
Okay. All right, I'll put it there.
Okay. Curtis, is there something you wanted me to look at first? Or I'm sorry, Mohammed? No. What's that? Break it up.
I don't know if I said I did or not.
Okay. All right. We'll go over a little bit of what it is you guys got for me on that tonight, a little bit. Tonight, though, it's movie night. Probably not too long. I don't know, maybe 15, 30 minutes. Hey, you got to change it up a little bit, you know, instead of me sitting here standing, talking, blabbing away.
Yeah.
We last week talked about runaways. Runaway. Last week, what did we talk about? Really opium wars, and then I seemed to manage to accelerate and get into unequal treaty system, extraterritoriality, a lot of terms that goes with the unequal treaty system because of those two treaties that were made up with the British Empire and the first Opium War, 1842, and a subsequent one that whether or not you call it the Second Opium War or a way like Julia Lovell describes it, kind of the residual part effects of the first Opium War in 1856. That was the Treaty of Nanjing, 1842. And then you had, what was the second one called? Let me go to my slide here. The Treaty Tianjin. Okay. Now, I don't think I got into Napier's Folly. Let's just do that. And then, of course, let me share my slides real quick. And Aiden, that's he's right there. Never mind. Share screen.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so I think y'all can kind of see it right there. Remember what we started out with, and really origins of opium wars, and dealt with opium. We dealt with, um, there's Devin. We dealt with really what happened when um, China emperor just really finally found out that, hey, I'm just getting involved in this drug racket, and it's really getting my people addicted. And of course, I say that rather euphemistically, because really understand what was the emperor's outlook on the rest of the world and his fellow Chinese. Really, it was the other way around. It's more like bottom up, and as far as looking at the emperor as the mandate of heaven. Um, and really the center of the world and the world outlook, and how that was the foreigners were perceived. Um, Really, it was, and that's what McCartney fell in on. And then here, I think I'll just mention, well, Lin Jesu. Forgive me, it's really hard to sometimes pronounce these Chinese words. But you know who he was? He was hired by the emperor to get on down into the Canton area and just break things up and just really start throwing down the hammer. You know, threaten people with death, the death penalty, you know, capital offense with, and of course, it brought together to try to get all the opium that he could. Of course, then really you had probably the kind of opposite of McCartney as far as his real threat of gunboat diplomacy, and that was Elliot. And of course, him getting hired by the Prime Minister Palmerston and really taking a very hard line with the Chinese government, much of which was that pressure from just being hanging out down there in one area, and what they felt was compromising the British Empire's sovereignty was unique with their sense of empire, was from influence from the Western history over the last 300 years. Well, by that at that time, probably 200 or 300 years of scientific revolution and enlightenment, and by this stage, that what aspect of trade was part of what they considered a right, and being able to engage freely upon that trade uh, within the very aspect of their own rights, and but also British national character. All right, something I probably touched upon. I won't dwell on it anymore when I talked about the McCartney Embassy. But let's go back to a second with the treaties and what was beginning to be that humiliation for nearly a century. It didn't really end until either, you know, what could it be, end of World War II, Japanese defeat or surrender, or 1949 with the Chinese Revolution and Mao, or 1997 when the lease upon Hong Kong finally was transferred back over to China. At least by that point, that's when Hong Kong finally transferred over to the sovereignty of the Republic of China, or People's Republic of China. The Treaty of Nanking brought forth initial unequal treaty system, extraterritoriality, which I would compare contemporarily with status of forces agreement, and the treaty ports, and then like Shanghai. But really, what that was Hong Kong, okay, came in. But the second one really started to the biggest the issue that really stuck with the economically, and of course economic. Oh, okay, I seem to. Okay, hold on, I'm getting an email from Justine. Hold on a second. She just got cut off. Walking. Oh, she's in class now. Okay, so she's heading home. She went to the classroom. All right. All right. Okay. She'll be up in a minute. Is email not fast enough? I don't know. It's the messages get spent. Speed of light, okay, but not, I guess not fast enough. Where was I? Treaty Tianjin really was the cream of, whatever you want to call it, the whipped cream on the sundae for the Western powers, and placing a tariff or getting rid of the import tariffs and make, what was the term for the British Empire by that time? What did Britain force upon China and their formal perception finally towards the British Empire as far as the trade, and really either decreasing or exempting those import duties into China? What was that? What was it called within an unequal treaty system? One of those terms that we use for this, other than extraterritoriality, wrote on the board last week. Most what?
I don't remember.
Because that term really came about with the second treaty here.
What, the gunboat diplomacy?
Now that would have been start of within the Opium Wars, but really the more economic trade term, unequal trade. So, most favored nation.
Yeah, never mind.
Most favored nation status. Hence, what you see here, there in Hong Kong and the treaty ports. Really, the treaty ports would become like today, right now. Best way to describe it is like Shanghai today, and a couple other. It's still essentially treaty port, but they're just special economic zones. That's what they are, especially Shanghai, a special economic zone where I believe Deng Xiaoping came in. I'm jumping way ahead now.
Yeah.
Jumping way ahead. Deng Xiaoping, the 90s, mid 80s, 90s, I'm getting there. Really just try to open up the country in regards economically, the further development of this ideology of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Well, he really got to that point where, we'll still have one political party for Maoism, but we'll free up the actual, we'll stop this nationalistic ownership of everything and actually allow everybody to start at least openly trade. Okay. And it worked. It did work to most respects. Shanghai is the way it is today because it was initially a treaty port, now special economic zone. Can't really, I'm not sure about the other places at this time. But there you see the initial place where it started. Okay. Okay, let's check out Napier's Folly. Didn't really talk about that last week. We'll look at that, and I'll even cheat here a little bit because my excuse is I can't cover everything that begins with as far as history of modern China. Is my excuse. It's a lame excuse, but it tends to work over Zoom. It really, yeah, let's just cheat here for a second. Yeah, now where is that? I think it was called out anyways. What is Napier's Folly? Oh, goodness gracious. Yeah, do I treat it as kind of a minor event? Yeah, I do. It really was part of, damn it, hold on a second. Maybe I'll just go with that. Okay. More about that later. Not talking about the city of New Zealand. Let's go ahead and watch a movie. How do I segue into this movie? Or it's a short documentary about the Taiping Rebellion. Okay, I really did go into that. It was a period when we started to see attempts by the Qing government within the latter part of the 19th century, after the Opium Wars, and as far as reform. The reform mostly to protect them, self-preservation. It really was. Of course, much of this came about after Opium Wars, unequal treaty system, and then internally, in response to that. Remember, though, what was the Taiping Rebellion in response to the missionaries? And one fellow who was failing his civil service exams, and whether or not he lost his mind and did see visions, or just hallucinating, whatever it is, it really started to be that spark upon which need for reform, at least, but sense of self-preservation, internal strife. So let's go and do that. This Taiping Rebellion. I think I am sharing the screen, aren't I? No, I'm not. Okay.
Civil War in 1861. The Taiping Rebellion in China was the deadliest civil war in human history. 20 to 30 million people would perish in it between 1851 and 1864. This number is roughly equivalent to the United States' population on the eve of its own civil war in 1861. This would mean that everyone in America would have died if the same deadly war with the same deadly consequences had occurred on its soil. Only the Second World War, occurring around a century later, would outdo the Taiping Rebellion's death toll. Astoundingly, the Taiping Rebellion was fought largely with edged weapons such as spears and swords. A sharp contrast to the American Civil War, which was fought with everything modern technology had to offer at the time. Despite widespread usage of modern weaponry, the American Civil War produced a death toll 30 times less than that of the Taiping Rebellion's death toll. A Chinese Civil War that later became an international conflict as the British, French, and Americans intervened militarily to protect their economic interests. A total war that drew no distinction between civilians or soldiers, men or women, as the countless large-scale massacres of civilians and the female soldiers of the Taiping armies attest to. Though the Taiping Rebellion's shocking death toll may be its most distinguishing feature, it also put China at a crucial cultural, political, and religious crossroads. A fork in the road that would forever alter the course of Chinese history, the consequences of which still can be felt today.
Okay, so let me see if Justine is back or not. Let me look at this. Nope, not back. Okay. Well, let me continue. Sorry about that. Think you guys can hear it?
Yes.
Okay, let me go ahead and get back to it.
Qing Dynasty, China, 1789. Born into impoverished circumstances, Liang Fa's schooling ended after only 4 years, forcing him to join the workforce. Eventually, he found steady and skilled work as a carver of printing blocks. Sometime in the 1810s, his newfound trade eventually landed him in Canton, China, where he tirelessly sought to promote and use his skills. At the time, the British East India Company had firm control over trade with China. Despite the economic powers of the East India Company, Qing Dynasty laws greatly restricted the mobility of all Europeans, for they were not allowed to venture outside a small section of land outside the walls of Canton. In 1815, Liang Fa, while promoting his printing block carving skills, met one of these foreigners, a Scottish Protestant missionary named William Milne. Milne hired Liang Fa, and the printing block carver went to work block printing Christian pamphlets in the Chinese language, even though, at the time, he was a devout Buddhist. Within a year of employment under Milne, Liang Fa, by 1816, had become a devout Christian, no doubt a result of Milne's tireless efforts to convert his Chinese employees. Liang Fa immediately set about writing and printing his own Christian literature. One of these pamphlets was called An Annotated Reader for Saving the World, which was distributed in the area of Canton in 1819. After the death of his teacher, Milne, in 1822, Liang Fa began working for the London Missionary Society, eventually becoming a preacher in 1827. By 1832, Liang Fa had completed his most ambitious work, Good Words for Exhorting the Age, a book which encompassed everything he had learned about Christianity in an accessible form for the Chinese reader. Having completed his most important work, Liang Fa began to relentlessly distribute the book throughout Canton and the surrounding areas. At times, he would even travel as much as 250 miles into the countryside, distributing thousands of copies of his work. Soon, Liang Fa would develop a new strategy for distribution whereby he would give his book to test takers of the local Confucian examinations. Though these men were undoubtedly firmly traditional in their outlook and beliefs, being budding experts in Confucianism, their education and literacy made them ideal potential converts. One of these men, soon to receive Liang Fa's book outside a Confucian examination hall, was named Hong Huo, better known as Hong Shuquan. Hong Huo was born on January 1st, 1814, in Fuyan Springs, Hua County, Guangdong Province. Soon after his birth, his family moved to a small, modest house in Guanlubu Village, Hua County, situated 30 miles north of Canton. Hong's family were farmers amidst a region dominated by hilly, rough terrain. Ethnically, the Hong family were Hakkas, which roughly translates to guest people, as their presence was relatively new in the region compared to the Cantonese. Despite the outsider label, the Hakkas were little different from the Cantonese, their greatest difference being that their women did not bind their feet due to their labor being needed in the fields. Hakkas often had to farm the worst farmlands, as most of the good tracts of land were already taken by the time their ancestors settled in the Cantonese-dominated region. Once a rich and prominent family, the Hongs now struggle to make a living as farmers on second-rate agricultural lands. The Hongs always held hope that one day their name could be restored to its former glory. Their ownership and operation of a local school fostered these dreams. It was in this schoolhouse that a young Hong Huo began to fervently study the Confucian classic texts at the age of 7. Hong Huo's youthful scholarship showed immediately, and he was soon able to recite by memory the 4 books, the 5 classics, and other compulsory texts for the civil service examinations. By Hong's early teens, he had become well versed in both Chinese literature and history. More so than their schoolhouse, the Hong's now believed that Hong Kuo Shou was their primary hope for greatness and prestige. Many teachers worked for free to hone Hong Kuo Shou's skills, hoping to be rewarded at some point if the child were to pass the civil service examinations. By age 13, Hong Kuo Shou took the local examinations and placed in first place. By the age of 16, Hong Kuo Shou became a teacher himself, receiving a modest income paid in rice, lard, lamp oil, and salt. Eventually, Hong Kuo Shou outgrew the educational limitations of his village, and as a result, his family pulled together all of their resources to finance his journey to a more specialized school away from the village. After the specialized instruction, Hong Kuo Shou journeyed toward Canton in 1827 to take the civil service examinations. After the first day of testing, sitting in a stuffy, cramped cubicle, Hong Kuo Shou placed high in the initial rankings. But by the third day, he lost his position and failed the test. Depressed, Hong Kuo Shou returned to his family farm to help out with their agricultural work. In 1836, a 22-year-old Hong Kuo Shou went to Canton again to take the regional Confucian examinations, having already passed at the local level. Outside the examination hall, among the crowds of other examinees, two men caught his attention. One was a Cantonese interpreter for a strange, foreign-looking man dressed in Ming Dynasty-era clothing. Through the mouth of his interpreter, the foreign man told everyone around him that there would be the fulfillment of their wishes, whether they chose to speak with him or not. To Hong Kuo Shou, the man told him, "You will attain the highest rank, but do not be grieved, for grief will make you sick." Little did Hong Kuo Shou know at the time, these remarks would prove to be prophetic. The next day, Hong Kuo Shou sees the two men again, and this time is wordlessly handed Liang Fa's book, Good Words for Exhorting the Age. Sources indirectly point towards the identity of the foreign man being Reverend Edwin Stevens, an American missionary from New England. But the identity of his interpreter remains a mystery to this day. Hong Kuo Shou only skims the book briefly before quickly forgetting about it. Soon afterwards, Hong fails the examinations. After the New Year's festivities of 1837 are over, Hong Kuo Shou again takes the qualifying examinations in Hua County. He passes once again. And once again, he travels to Canton for the second stage. In the second lunar month of 1837, Hong finds out that he has yet again failed to pass the Canton examinations for a third time. Beginning to feel very ill, Hong hires a sedan chair with two bearers to carry him back to Guanlubu, Hua County. Seated upon the sedan chair, Hong falls asleep. Upon returning home, he falls into a sickened slumber while having wildly vivid dreams. All during this time, his concerned family crowds around his bed, having been called over by Hong. "Oh, my parents, how badly have I returned the favor of your love to me. I shall never attain a name that may reflect its luster upon you." Hong Kuo Shou. Hong's family fears the worst, thinking that he is dying. After these last words, Hong Kuo Shou loses all strength and falls asleep again and has yet another dream. A dragon, a tiger, and a rooster enter the room along with many musicians playing music. An ornate sedan chair, held by some of the musicians, enters the room. They request that Hong board their sedan chair. Hong mounts the chair and begins rising off the ground towards the skies above. Exuberant men and women greet Hong as he reaches the heavens. An elderly woman escorts Hong to a river, telling him, "Thou dirty man, why hast thou kept company with yonder people, and defiled thyself? I must now wash thee clean." She proceeds to wash the sin from Hong's body. Groups of old men appear. Hong recognizes some of them to be the sages of ancient China. They then proceed to escort him to a large building. Upon reaching the structure, they cut him open and remove his insides and have them replaced with new reddish-colored insides. Then, unknown forces seal the incision in an instant, leaving no scarring. Examining the walls within the building, Hong notices that a number of tablets with writings about morality and honor are hung all over the walls. The men then escort Hong towards a magnificent hall. So beautiful, words alone cannot begin to describe it. Imposingly higher than anything else in the chamber, a man sat dressed in a black robe and had an enormous golden beard. The bearded man wept while saying to Hong, "All the human beings in the whole world are produced and sustained by me. They eat my food and wear my clothing, but not a single one among them has a heart to remember and venerate me. What is, however, still worse than that? They take of my gifts, and therewith worship demons. They purposely rebel against me and arouse my anger. Do thou not imitate them." The bearded man then gave Hong a sword for killing demon devils, along with a seal and a yellowish fruit, which he consumed. The bearded man led him to look down at the humans on earth, explaining that everywhere he could see there occurred defilement and perversion. Afterwards, Hong is made to read scrolls filled with knowledge. Hong asks the bearded man, now referred to as father, what could be done about the situation. At first, father is dejected and tells his son that nothing can be done about it. Hong insists that he can help him by driving the demon devils out of heaven. Finally, father agrees, and Hong and his elder brother proceed to exterminate the demon devils in heaven. Though father allows them to slaughter all of the demon devils in heaven, he orders that the demon devil king, Yan Luo Wang, flee, as his very presence, dead or alive, would defile heaven. Tired after his conquest, Hong Huo Xiu rests in a palace with his wife, the first chief moon, whom he has a son with. Father guides Hong through a series of texts and tells him to return back to Earth and rid it of the demon devils so that the people there may be transformed. But before Hong leaves, Father orders Hong to add the name Quan, or completeness, to his name. From now on, Hong Huo Xiu was no more, and everyone would refer to him now as Hong Shu Quan. Father also bestowed the title Heavenly King, Lord of the Kingly Way, Quan, upon Hong as well. As Hong Shu Quan descends back to Earth, Father, while handing Hong 2 poems, assures him that he will be his protector throughout his coming struggle.
Okay. All right. Let's shut that down. Okay. All right. That one was probably a little bit more of a, I don't know, low budget type. What can we take away from that? Really was some detail though, as far as, or at least what the gentleman was describing what his dreams were. And of course, afterwards, we see how being part of a different ethnic group, or at least somewhere from outsiders, and as the women weren't also, the Nahaka weren't bound their feet. So a lot of cultural influences in regards to for him coming up through or growing up, and then of course, pretty bright person, and but of course the introduction of other elements of ideology, mostly Protestant Christianity and the missionaries. And he tends to mix in a lot of that. I could play part two, but I feel like it's just kind of going to just dwell on more of this dream or something. What we can do with, I won't go into, keep backing up into the opium, or opium wars. Napier's Folly, that thing that was described as William Napier as a superintendent of trade down there in Canton, 1834, and more problems with the Canton system, the merchants down there, well, the middlemen and the Hong. Okay, but let's move forward now. Let me go to the slides I probably pushed up last week. So what we see here is probably what he was talking about. Let me bring up my share screen again. Share screen.